Hey everybody, Josh Sigurdson of World Alternative Media here, and we're joined once again by Kenneth Ameduri of crushthestreet.com, and we're going to talk about all things money today. First of all, thank you for joining us again.
Thank you, Josh, for having me. Appreciate the invite.
Absolutely. Now, there have been a lot of things in the news regarding, potential fear of war, plague, civil unrest. There's the elections coming up, and it all seems to be having an interesting effect on things like gold, silver, palladium, rhodium. There's a lot of things that a lot of people aren't talking about is actually rhodium. Rhodium. Can you go into the effects that the most recent news has had on, metals? Because I remember 2018 was not a great year, and through 2019 and especially into 2020 with a lot of, I guess, bad news. As many have said before, bad news is good news. Can you go into that a bit?
Yeah, it's an interesting dynamic what we're seeing right now with metals and the news and markets. Stocks have just been on this increasing bull market trend. I mean, ongoing, decade-long bull market. I mean, we're deep in the tooth of this bull market when it comes to stocks here. And, negative interest rates, war, the debt ceiling that doesn't matter, deficits doesn't matter. All of these things seem to roll off the back of the stock market, which is investors' sentiment. Yet you all of a sudden throw in this coronavirus scare. Investors don't have a real precedence on what this can turn into, how bad of an event this can be. And we saw the stock market pull back 1,100 points. On Friday, we had the worst day on the Dow Jones since last August of 2019. And we're seeing some real hesitation, because people don't know what to anticipate. They've come to just accept endless deficits and debts and, the threat of a war. I mean, who cares about war, right? I mean, stocks are just going to keep going up. That's the sentiment that we get on the markets. And, but when it comes to this plague, people don't know what to expect surrounding it. And I think this is an interesting dynamic. Something is going to cause the stock market to pull back. And I think it's going to be a very big issue. And this could be the catalyst that does that to the stock market here, depending on how bad this does get.
Now, I want to go into metals further in a moment, but first I have to, with what you just said there, I have to kind of ask you, what's stopping the Fed and the Plunge Protection Team from just coming in and saving, the stock market next time we see a major dip and loss of sentiment?
Well, I mean, it's definitely something that they're going to do. I mean, at Davos, they're talking about the end of the boom bust cycle because it's just going to be endless money printing, endless loose monetary policies. There's no shortage of their ability to go ahead and do that. But, they're shooting their wad, so to speak, when it comes to this. And at some point, something's got to give. And it's really interesting. I mean, if we can segue a little bit over and use what's happening in metals as an example, what we're seeing in rhodium is a supply shortage. And we're seeing Bitcoin-like moves in rhodium because there's a supply shortage. There's a demand for it. There's been some, increases in Chinese regulations when it comes to clean energy. And rhodium is a very scarce resource. Rhodium and palladium are scarce resources that are used in catalytic converters for green energy purposes. And, they tighten the screws on that. The supply shortage happened and boom, you saw this massive price rise. I mean, just in the last 30 days, we're up 40% in rhodium. I mean, who the hell knows about rhodium, right? I mean, people are learning about it now, but we're again seeing this start to play out. And again, it reminds you that stuff ultimately, natural law of economics start to take effect. And when you anticipate these things, you're on the right side of the trade. And right now, stocks are very overvalued. And when we do see that uncontrollable event, that sentiment really shift, because right now people are so conditioned to think that stocks are going to continue to go higher. And, up until recently, people were conditioned to think that metals were just destined to be in the dumps. It's only been recently that we're starting to get that confidence of gold and silver going higher here. Gold closing in on $1,600, silver getting back to that $20 mark. We really believe at Crush the Street that around the 2150 mark is that ceiling when silver can really take off. There's a lot of technical significant factors at that 2150 level that go back to 2011, 2008, and
Right.
where we really saw it take off in that 2011 bull run.
Well, I do want to note, because we've seen this before, just looking at the rhodium price right now, if you go to all time, you see leading up to 2008, rhodium exploded in value to about 10K back then. And, we're seeing a lot of the same things in gold and silver that lead up to potential turmoil. I personally don't think the recession ever ended. I think it's just been papered over. But nonetheless, I feel like there's been a really historic move towards a lot of these metals that we've seen before. I mean, is history repeating? Is it rhyming? It seems like this is very, very reminiscent of what we saw back in 2006 to 2008.
Well, I think so. But, keep in mind the rhodium, palladium, it's really coming down to that industrial use. And when we see the gold and silver story play out, it's going to be more of a hedge against inflation, a crisis. Right. And that's the sentiment, what's brewing underneath the surface. And what's interesting about precious metals, it's rising in the face of a bull market in stocks. It's almost like the precious metals are not believing the bull market. And it kind of it lends itself to what you're saying. It doesn't really believe the recovery, the recession recovery that everyone is talking about, which again is really why it's so important to be so picky when it comes to what you're investing in right now. I mean, the stock market right now, 18% of the S&P 500 is made up of the top 5 companies. It's insane. And that's what happens in a manic phase when you have that blow off top and an accelerated amount of capital gets into just a few big companies, huge companies. It just gets into that manic phase in that blow off top. And those companies just losing a little bit can really unravel this whole entire thing. And the question is will the Fed be able to handle this? And I don't know if that's the case. And if you go back to Davos, the coming from this grandiose platform, this World Economic Summit, this conventional mainstream, this is not you and me talking on YouTube in our home offices. This is this grandiose platform, CNBC, Bloomberg. They're talking like us. Some of these people, Ray Dalio, cash is trash. Scott Miner talking about this whole thing being a Ponzi scheme. I think we're going to see some shifts that central banks are not going to be able to control with ultra low interest rates, and the opportunities to be positioned in quality investments is not really there. And that's actually why we created a special report to hone in on a highest conviction opportunity at crushthestreet.com/KB. And I highly recommend people to go there. I cannot discuss that here for disclosure purposes, but it's going to be a great report. It is a great report, a great read, and something I think everyone should be able to benefit from.
That's what I like about you guys. You guys have a lot of really interesting reports, and that's why it's always good to talk with you. But, there's a lot of, as you said, dissatisfaction, a lot of concern. We saw private and public ownership hit a 50% in gold last year, which is not something we've seen in a long time. We're seeing a lot of I remember years ago reporting on these stories, and, I was just called crazy, alternative, wacko, all that kind of stuff. And now I'm hearing, the most mainstream, even Keynesian economists saying the same thing that I was saying years ago. Honestly, I feel like they just don't want to be like Ben Bernanke in 2007 saying everything's going to be great, everything's fine, or a Paul Krugman, the internet's a trend. I feel like there's a lot of people in the mainstream that are kind of coming to realize that they need to cover their butts if something really bad happens. All the things that they've been claiming is all just false, fake news out of, the financial YouTube alternative channels. It's all coming to fruition, unfortunately, for a lot of people. And at Davos, the Brazilian finance minister was saying, there's only going to be about 6 currencies in 20 or 30 years. I mean, there's a lot of people in the top positions of power in finance saying, maybe we should take a step back and look at this. This has been growing for a long time. There's an everything bubble worldwide, and eventually it has to come to fruition. There's only so much money you can print. But I wanted to hear your thoughts on how gold and silver at the end of the day will hold up, because, a lot of people call it money. A lot of people call it a safe haven. A lot of people call it an investment. What do you think going forward after a major collapse of the kind that the magnitude we'd see if the stock market were to, collapse? That would be huge for gold. So what do you see it as going forward?
If you don't mind, let me read off just to respond to that earlier point. One of our contributing editors, a great writer at Crush the Street, he wrote this on a post. The world is awash with manipulation, deceit, and propaganda designed to alter one's thinking. In today's age of 24/7 news cycle, information does not stop. Social media influencers, mainstream propaganda, and YouTube censorship are all designed to turn you into a mushroom. There's a quote that people always refer to as, lock them up in the dark and feed them shit. Deceit can only be deceitful for as long as people know they are being cheated. And I think when it comes to how long they can continue to lie to us, things like the internet are exposing this narrative that they once had. And with something like the Donald Trump election, and all the lies that have been coming, about him, the corporate elitists, the deep state that have, framed him as someone who was not going to win. And they completely lied to everyone about this. And then obviously him coming out and actually winning, that was a huge eye-opener for a lot of people. And then all of the things that came to follow, so many of the lies that were just not true about him. Again, I think people are really starting to question the system, from a political point of view, from an economic point of view. And I think that exposure is going to be ultimately good for the not just the top 1%, but the masses. And I think that's very powerful.
Yeah, you don't need to rig elections when they can just get people to repeat after them in the media. And I think that kind of sentiment's dying off because people aren't watching the mainstream media as much as they used to.
Absolutely. And remind me what your second part of that question was. I went down a rabbit hole and then I lost it.
Yeah, just your thoughts on gold being money, a safe haven, an investment. I mean, there's a lot of different angles on this, just like we've seen in crypto, which we'll be getting into later. But what are your thoughts? Is it money? Is it a safe haven, wealth insurance? Is it investment? What do you think?
I mean, it's all of the above. Gold is one of those areas where I think there's investment value right now because it's been underappreciated. I think the last time we did this interview, gold was probably $1,200, maybe $1,300, probably in the $1,200 range. And arithmetically, it was much better to listen to me back then than it is now, even though I think that gold is still, highly opportunistic. This is a great time to be looking at precious metals. We haven't seen a crisis even that the world has had to deal with. I mean, gold is just starting to move, and we're still in the early stages of that. So the fact that it's money is that we're not going to see it go to zero, and it's going to continue to go higher over the longer term. Now, in the short to medium term, I think there's going to be a massive correction upwards, and that's where the opportunity to profit is going to come from. And I think it's important because there's not that many places to put your money right now where capital is going to be flowing into. There's a lot of capital in certain areas that are going to spill out. Gold is going to be a vacuum that gets filled with capital, and that's where the opportunity lies.
Yeah, absolutely. And, talking about early opportunities, I got to kind of talk about cryptocurrency here because there has been an interesting move towards cryptocurrency. I mean, we haven't seen it break the all-time highs in years now, but with that said, I've never seen so much, investor sentiment regarding crypto since the beginning of the last bull market. Before all the, euphoria and speculation kicked in, there's a halving coming up on May 16th of the supply of Bitcoin, and I wanted to hear your thoughts on the price of Bitcoin right now versus the potential. You've said it before that it could reach $100,000. Personally, I think long term with adoption, it could definitely even go higher than that. What do you think of the future of Bitcoin going into the 2020s?
Well, Bitcoin continues to prove itself. I mean, we're so early in the game. We talked about precious metals. Gold and silver had a 5,000-year history of price discovery, of the world being able to fairly value it. And arguably, it's not fairly valued with how long it's been around, plus all the manipulation. You add it all into it, it's still very undervalued. But Bitcoin's only been around for 10 years, still being introduced to the world. The world doesn't trust it yet. They're still trying to understand it. They haven't fully understand and wrap their minds around its use, the concept of it. It's, early in the game, so you need to trust it. But we've done tremendous amount of research when it comes to Bitcoin. We've interviewed the top names. I have full confidence in the technology, in the mathematics, in the, censorship resistant. I mean, all of these different things that it has, the store of value capabilities, the ability to move money around the world. I mean, such a powerful tool, going back to, currencies and, options for currencies going forward. This is such a revolutionary technology, and just a small amount of money entering the space will cause it to go to that $50,000, $100,000. And it will continue to surprise people. People don't like to always focus on price, especially when they see it fall, or, it goes to $6,000, it's falling to $5,000. And everyone's like, oh, we got to look at the fundamentals. But the fact is as we see Bitcoin go higher, it's going to prove itself to more of the conventional wisdom, the mainstream, the people who aren't, researching. It's just going to start to be part of their lives. I mean, people are going to be investing in ETFs and index funds, and they don't even know what Bitcoin is or don't even care about it, because that's what it's doing. It's penetrating the real financial world. And, I know Libra is very controversial. The Facebook Libra coin, it's not a direct competitor to Bitcoin. It's actually a dilution of it on the surface, but it's going to onboard a lot of people into the digital crypto asset community that never would have interacted with Bitcoin before. But I mean, there's 1 billion users on the Facebook network. All of a sudden they integrate Libra into this. That's going to really turn a lot of people on to, what is this cryptocurrency all about?
Turn people on to much better currencies.
I'm sorry, say that one more time.
It'll turn people on to much greater currencies.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Coinbase, for instance, wasn't the original intention of Bitcoin, signing up with a bank account, handing over your personal details, connecting your banks and, all of your personal information. But it really made it easy for millions of people to get into the space. And I think there's going to be an aspect of conventional channels that bring people in and expose them to really the wild west of money and, the free market of money that is there to be had in the crypto space. And Bitcoin right. is a place to be. If you don't want to get burned in the short term, because we do have the halving coming up, everyone thinks that it's going to spike, because of the halving right away. I mean, they're going to look back at history and say, hey, look what happened, the last time this happened. And, there's just, they're going to expect it to go to $100,000 right after. I tend to think that the market is going to surprise people. Maybe we shoot up to the halving and then, we correct the day of the halving because, markets have a way of washing and rinsing investors. But That's not to say I don't believe long term in this. There's going to be short term ups and downs when it comes to this, but longer term, I mean, if you haven't had a piece of this, now is a good time. I mean, you can still get in under $10,000. This will go to $50,000 and $100,000 in short order here.
Right. And Kenneth, I mean, at the end of the day, I think the halving is more of a telltale sign of a bull market many months down the line from the halving. Like leading up to the halving, people are probably going to bet on it, and you're right, it probably will actually correct the day of the halving or around the day of the halving. I think it's just more of a better sign down the line, say 3-4 months. If history tells us anything, it seems to be that people did do exactly as you say around the time of the halving. But I want to mention, there's so many great cryptocurrencies out there, a lot of great altcoins, but as far as adoption goes with Bitcoin specifically, almost every gas station now in Las Vegas has a Bitcoin ATM. The casinos in Las Vegas all have Bitcoin ATMs. You go to the mall, they got Bitcoin ATMs there. It's really a growing trend. The volume is great. And going forward, I think a lot of people, their hesitance with Bitcoin has to do with what they believe is value. And I don't think there is an intrinsic value. I think the value comes from individuals on the market decide on something. Scarcity, application use, and demand. It's not because it's physical or isn't physical. It's because it is useful. There's a scarcity of it, and there's obviously a great demand for that product. And I think people would have to be delusional to think that going down the line 100 years in the future, unless the whole grid goes down and something crazy happens, that people are just going to be using, physical cash all the time. We're going cashless, and either we can go in the way of, creepy technocracy in China, or, individual free market demand with cryptocurrencies and, what one might call sound money. I like to hear your thoughts on, something like cryptocurrency versus, a lot of people's concerns with the so-called cashless society that we're seeing in places like China, because I feel like there's a massive difference between the two types of markets.
Well, when it comes to whether or not people are going to use it, one of the things that I think about, in terms of like intrinsic value, people have and are continuing to believe deeper and deeper in Bitcoin and its value. And there is a cost when it comes to supporting the network. The miners have a cost. And, I heard an estimate that, after the halving, I think the cost of production for it to, be viable for the miners has to be around $4,500. Now it's much lower than where it is now, but it gives it sort of a base. And that's not to say that it can't go below $4,500, because I'll give you an example. I own a house in Tennessee that's worth like $35,000. Now I had to insure it for $100,000, because if it was to get knocked down or burned down or hit by a tornado, it cost $100,000 to build. But on the retail market, I probably could only sell it for 40. So, again, it's sometimes markets can be irrational, and just same thing with silver. Silver has been below the cost of production for a very long time. It's only just recently that we're kind of getting, $1 or $2 above that cost of production level. And it's possible, but the more people use it, you have that network effect, that growing use. You do have that real need for it. And as long as you have that, and again, the more it grows, the more it compounds on itself, the more it gets solidified as the dominator. Imagine trying to remove the English language from the world. It'd be nearly impossible to undo that because of how much it's embedded in society and, the world. And, it's just the cost to replace it. It's unreal. It'd be ridiculous. It could happen over time, maybe through a major war or something massively destructive. But to displace Bitcoin from where it is right now, it's nearly impossible. And the momentum that it has, and, honestly, that pure base that it started with, it just can't easily be replicated. So I believe very much long-term in that. Yeah, no.
I think that, Satoshi made it clear this was built to hedge against, a crisis or a recession. And I feel like we're really going to see this really take action in the next major crisis. And I think that could give some hope to a lot of people that are concerned about people. So many people lost their homes. So many people lost so much, everything they had during the 2007 2008. And I think that this actually provides an opportunity outside of gold and silver as well, and rhodium and all these others, to really hedge your bets against something that could really shake up the financial sector. But I want to finish it off by asking you, and this is a pretty generalized question, but I wanted to ask you, what are you most excited for, and what are you most concerned about going forward into the 2020s as far as the markets go?
I'm definitely, without a doubt, most excited about precious metals. Mostly because that's where the majority of my money is. I have a smaller amount. I have a more speculative position in cryptocurrency. I think there's a really asymmetric reward that there is to be had there. But the bulk of what I have invested, where I put my money where my mouth is in the precious metals sector. And, with the mining stocks that I own, the leveraged exposure that I have to this, beyond just a savings, I think there's going to be some really leveraged rewards for how we're positioned here at Crush the Street. And like I said, we have a very special report, a highest conviction opportunity report at crushthestreet.com/KB. This is a brand new report, and something I think that your listeners are really going to enjoy. And then what I'm most concerned about, honestly, it's going to be the unraveling of the financial sector. I mean, really, people feel so insulated by, when they look around, how they're able to pay their mortgage now. They got cushion, surrounding them. Maybe they have a job. They're able to feed their family. Things are going well at their job. But there's a cascading of events that take place when the system collapses that ultimately breaks those barriers that are insulating what people have found their comfort in. And because of that, I think there's going to be a massive shock to the system. People are going to get burned. They're unprepared and it's going to happen 2 and 3 layers removed from where they are. And that's what's going to shock people. They're going to lose their job based on something that happens, 2 and 3 layers outside of where they are. And because of that, that's why I think it's very important to be exposing this, talking about the bubble, talking about the everything bubble, and showing people that there are opportunities to be positioned in things that are undervalued, that are going to be the recipient of the transfer of wealth that's going to happen from the financial sector into the real money vehicles of the world.
Absolutely. I think it's a responsibility of those of us that study the market, study money, to pass on that information to as many people as we can. And hopefully it plants a seed, and some people can save themselves from another collision course, because we've seen enough of them over the last century that we should be onto this at this point in time. Anyway, finishing it off then, can you tell us where people can find more of your work, support the work you do, find you on YouTube, your website, all that, and hopefully go over and check out your reports?
Absolutely. Well, thanks so much for having me on the show. People can visit my work at crushthestreet.com. Feel free to check us out at crushthestreet.com on YouTube, youtube.com/crushthestreet. I should be releasing just momentarily an interview I did with Michael Pinto, one I hosted over the weekend, similar to the interviews that you've done here. It's just a channel, a website where we like to have a lot of fun. We got a lot of very smart contributors that are posting on a very regular basis at crushthestreet.com. And honestly, it's where I get a lot of my news source. I mean, from the people that work with me. I mean, I go on there and I see just, all the research, all the work that's being put on the website, and it's a great source of information. So I hope people can check it out.
I 100% recommend it. I really appreciate you joining us again, and hopefully we'll talk with you again soon.
Thank you, sir.
Like what you see here at Wham, don't forget to check the links below. GoFundMe, Patreon. We cannot do it without you guys. Every donation is extremely, extremely appreciated as we're getting incredibly shadow banned. We've lost 80% of our audience since January of 2019 and counting. They are ripping us apart here on YouTube, and the only thing we could do in the meantime as we prepare for the next big step is to ask for help from the viewers that support our free information that we try to post on a daily basis. You can also find us on Subscribestar, where just $1 a month, that's all it takes, $1 a month is all it takes to truly make a huge difference. If everyone gave $1 a month, it would change everything for independent media, and we could win this information war, and we can defeat the mainstream medias eventually. And of course, on Subscribestar, we post subscriber-only content that you'll only see on Subscribestar. So make sure to pledge there, become a patron. That makes a huge difference, guys. And also, don't forget to check out our Bitcoin address below in the comments and description, as well as on the screen for you to scan if you please. And also, don't forget to subscribe to us on the alternatives. We will likely be deleted by YouTube in the next 2 years. It's already happening on a vast scale, so make sure to find us on float.app. That's flote.app. At Josh Sigurdson, as well as at Wham, W-A-M. Float.app is replacing every social media, and I mean, it's just incredible the opportunities it provides for not just creators, but for the average person who wants to get away from these nannies telling them what they can or cannot see. They plan to replace Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Twitch, Tumblr, Reddit, and Patreon. You could subscribe to us on Float and pledge with cryptocurrency. It's really innovative. We are also on BitChute at World Alternative Media, as well as so many others, Minds, PocketNet. You can find us at World Alternative Media on Instagram. There's many options. And finally, don't forget to join us at Anarchapulco 2020, the famous event, the best Liberty event known to mankind, other than perhaps Anarcho Vegas 2020. There are 2 major events coming up that we are extremely excited about, and you can use promo code WHAM, that's W-A-M, and save 10% on your tickets to these legendary conferences. There's so many amazing people speaking there. You won't want to miss it. So make sure to support in any way you can, even if it's just sharing our videos, pressing like, pressing to be notified. Anything helps, folks. You are the change you wish to see. Thanks for watching, everyone. And until next time, this is Josh Sigurdson signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change.
I'm sure you have already changed people's minds in your young age because you're involved, and I like that.